Greetings, everyone. Welcome to Artcasters number 342. And we've got a first-time guest coming up, and we will introduce him in a minute. But first, we're going to do what we always do. We're going to go around the room, introduce ourselves, and talk about anything we got going on. Since it's on my channel this week, I'll start off. Scott with Circworks Art Labs. You can find my stuff at circworks.com. Here, let me put that. Circworks.com. And I've got a bunch of digital products that'll help you create comics. I've got the Comic Maker Toolkit, the Amazing Comic Book World Builder, and a slew of other digital products for making comics. I also have a bunch of prints up there. Or you can go right here on this YouTube channel and you can find my series called Making Comics 101. It is a series on how to make comics. It's free on YouTube, and it's pretty much the most comprehensive course you're going to find for free anywhere that I've seen. So definitely check that out if you want to learn step-by-step how to make comics, everything from coming up with your idea all the way to finishing your story and printing it, publishing it, everything in between. And also, I've got my comic book Young and the Dead. I just ran a Kickstarter for it, and I got the funds, so I sent everything off to the printer, so it shouldn't be too long from now that I get that stuff and start sending it out. But if you weren't on that Kickstarter, then you can buy the first 4 issues on my website, and then the 5th one will be available soon after I send the Kickstarter stuff out. So that's me. And what about you, Josh? What do you got going on?
All right. Other than, I just wanted to note that, Scott, when you say greetings, I always imagine that you say earthlings afterwards. Like, greetings, earthlings.
Well, that's why I say it, because it's kind of, yeah.
Anyhow, okay. So you can get my latest graphic novel, Jacob's Apartment, which is kind of like if you took Eternal Sunshine for the Spotless Mind and Ghost World, put them in a blender. If you like that flavor of story, it's a doomed romance, slice of life, 138-page graphic novel out from Graphic Mundi. And if you guys already have it, also make sure you go to your local library and ask that the library order this book, this one. And then other than that, there's 2 stories, which is my graphic novel about faith and mental illness. And then aside from that, 2 albums just dropped last week by No Saboteurs on all streaming platforms everywhere. One called No Emperors is like just some straight post-hardcore punk rock. And then the other is more experimental, and that one's called Good Bees Don't Die. So both of those are free on all streaming platforms. Go check them out. And that's my wares.
Cool. And Corey, what about you?
So what's that?
Still in the garage, I see.
Yeah, and I probably will be for a while, given the state of my house. So, but yeah, I finished this, and so you can see lots of fun little details in this. And so this is coming soon to my new and revamped store, which doesn't exist yet, but it will soon.
Corey, can you go back to that scale part real quick?
Maybe. No, it's not. That's freezing up. Hold on. That here?
That's insane.
Oh, thanks.
That's nice.
I stole that technique is lifted straight out of Art Adams, so I can't claim that I invented anything there. But if you want to follow along and be notified when that does go live on posters, shirts, stickers, whatever I decide to do with that, just go to coreykerr.com/email and sign up for the email newsletter, and then you'll be notified. But it'll be a little bit as I get things going. But I'm going to do an entire new product line, so I'll talk more about that as it kind of forms. But that's the first of many.
All right. And on to our guest. So our guest is David Lujan, no relation to our friend Jim, but David is an independent artist and musician. And I mean, he was just telling us about a lot of stuff that he's been doing in the sort of the DIY, with the DIY movement and the indie art and everything. So I'm definitely anxious to talk to David. So I don't know, why don't you introduce yourself and tell, and I know also you got a Kickstarter coming up, so talk about that and whatever else you want to talk about, and then we'll get into the topic.
Hi, I'm David, also known as David by all the white people out there. It's cool. It's fine. It's fine. I've currently got a book called Yuriko. It's a vampire story set in 1900 Seoul. It's coming out on Lesser Known Comics. If you don't know about them, you should go check it out. LesserKnownComics.com is the publisher that's graciously decided to help me. I don't know why they decided to help me. I'm a total greenhorn when it comes to these things. Yuriko is my first comic to ever publish. I am also working on a comic called Narita, which is about a mermaid who gets trapped on land and abducted by fairies, and she gets caught in these weird like wars on land and all this stuff. I foolishly wrote both of the stories and drew them all and did all the lettering and all of the design work and all of the social media and all the everything for them because I didn't know you could ask other people to help you. I'm also in a couple of music projects. I've got a indie rock kind of art rock band that I'm in with my wife called Born Twins, and I play drums and I play bass at the same time in that band, which sounds kind of weird, but it's doable. And then I play guitar in a band called Yardwork. That's a pretty straight ahead punk rock band that sings songs about trimming trees and cutting the grass and whatever. And we've got stuff up on all the streaming platforms for both of those projects. And then I have another little project called Pure Imposture that I kind of started up. It's just me playing bass and singing super sad songs. And I play along with a little like electric organ that I got from a friend who passed away, and it's got this super sick drum machine on it that I run through effects and make it sound fun. So anyway, yeah, that's kind of what I'm up to at the moment. So
that's awesome. And I do want to mention that there is a link to your Kickstarter in the description of the video. So if you want to click on that, do you want to talk a little bit about what the comic's about?
Yeah. So the comic, I started writing this story about a Korean vampire during the pandemic, and I don't know why. It didn't make any sense why some dude from Texas would be writing about this. But the comic book is set in between the gaps in time that happen in the actual like novella, which spans hundreds of years, right? So everywhere from the Mongol hordes all the way to like it goes up to about World War I. So there's big gaps in history that happen in the history of the story. And so I wanted this comic book to it's going to be 5 parts, and the one that's up right now is issue number 1. It's got like I guess 3 or 4 different variant covers on there that you can choose from that are all pretty cool. I think I tried to make them as diverse as possible. And the Kickstarter is running through October 16th. And if you scroll all the way down to the bottom too, you can get some of the other LKC comics that are in the catalog. So if you need to catch up on some like, Chiasm or Tights or any of the lesser known comics like first and second volumes that were put out by Mark, you can grab those as well. So yeah, I highly recommend going and check it out. It's my first Kickstarter too, so help a brother
It
out.
looks like it's doing pretty good. You're funded already, right?
Yeah. We actually funded in the first 24 hours, which is pretty awesome.
Good. Yeah,
nice.
That's good. Yeah. That's good. Yeah, and Mark's a good friend of mine, and I coach Mark and everything with lesser known comics. So David, how did you get in touch with Mark, or how did you guys kind of get together, or did you just submit your stuff to different people, or?
It was a total Neanderthal move on my part. I just saw that he had posted a couple of videos where he's holding comic books up, and he's like, "This comic's awesome. You should get this comic." Blah 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 blah. And I was like, okay. So I just sent him a message and was like, "Hey, you should put out my comic." I mean, that was it. And then somebody got back to me and they were like, "I'm not really in charge of deciding that. We're kind of booked, so you should get in touch with so and so." And so I tried, and I heard nothing. And then months later, Mark got back to me. He was like, "Hey, are you still looking for a publisher?" And I was like, "Well, yeah, I guess so. I don't really know what I'm doing at all." And once we got into conversation, he realized, he was like, "Oh, dude, the comic's already completely drawn and finished completely. The Kickstarter had already been built. I already kind of had a small social media following. And so it was kind of a no-brainer on his end, and it was a no-brainer on my end because I really had no idea what to do from that point on, and Mark had that knowledge. So we connected, and it seems like things are working out great so far.
Yeah, the book looks great. And so you say you're sort of a noob, but the book, like I said, the book looks great. So I kind of doubt that a little bit, but I know, in what little I know about you, I know you've got kind of a history doing, indie art and that kind of the indie scene.
Yeah.
And it sounds like you've kind of have experience with like screen printing and stuff like that, which that stuff is always interesting to me. And just, I mean, I love the whole gig poster. I don't know if you've delved into that at all, but
I've been doing that for years and years. Touring bands that come through and like friends bands are opening for them, so they get a local on the bill. And so my friends would be like, "Hey, can you screen print a poster for it? We'll sell them at the show. You take half, and the headliner will take the other half, or whatever." So that handful of times. Also, whatever band I'm in, they're always like, "Hey, can you screen print some shirts and design the record cover and also do this and also do that?" I did go to art school for printmaking, so I've always been really, really interested in like graphic imagery, things that can be printed. I'm afraid of touching artwork. If I actually touch it, like with a pencil on paper, I'll screw it up. So I have to like smush things onto stuff. You know what I'm saying? Does that make sense?
Yeah, definitely.
Or stencil. Like I love going stenciling. My daughter and I go out and we wheat paste all the time, or we'll put up illegal spray paint stencils around town and sticker places where we're not supposed to sticker. I figure I can use it as a human shield and be like, "No, officer, I'm not doing anything wrong. Look, I have a child with me. There's no way I would ever dream of."
I don't know if Corey knows this, but there's still a bunch of his stickers around Arizona in various places because so my girlfriend threw this birthday party for me, and she enlisted Josh to do a gift for me that was his version of my comic book, and then she had Corey do some video stuff and also order some stickers. And basically she created a scavenger hunt. So I had to go around looking for, and those were the markers of the places where Corey's various stickers that he did. And there's still one up by the comic store, and there's one over by the movie theater. Every time I drive by, I look to see if they're still there, and they're still there.
I don't know why. I don't know why it's so. It feels so good when you go by a place and you're like, "Oh, there's my wheat paste," or "Oh, there's my." I don't know why it feels good, and then it gets taken down and a little bit of your soul dies. But that's why you go out and you make more street art and you pollute the city with more of that stuff. I don't know why, but I love it. I've always loved it. So.
But it seems like Austin would be a place like that happens a lot, and it's kind of probably part of the whole vibe down there.
I wish it was. It was. We've gotten a lot more Tesla driving gentrification going on right now. So everything is and the tech people who are moving here and stuff, they're great. They're nice people. Everyone that I've met has been cool, and they love that culture. Yeah. But they're not participating in that culture.
Well, that's,
you know what I mean? It's not a 5-gallon bucket of wheat paste in the back of a Tesla that's rolling up to. You know what I mean? Like you just don't do that. But they love to see it. So. I'm trying to hold my end up of the bargain.
I guess I guess if they support it financially, if they, that's cool too. But unfortunately with the gentrification, that's where everyone comes because that whole DIY kind of artist vibe. But then it changes, and then the whole reason they came isn't there anymore. But hopefully that won't happen to Austin. But yeah,
it's a vicious circle, but it's all right,
Yeah. So you said you're a native. You grew up in Austin and everything. So you've been around this thing probably your whole life. I've been seen probably its rise and everything. So
yeah, absolutely. I mean, people complain about it a lot to me, but the way I see it, when I grew up in Austin, I grew up in a pretty bad part of Austin, and there was prostitutes on the street. There was a crack house across the street from my elementary school. I saw people get shot. There was some wonderful things that happened to me also as a child. It wasn't all horrible, but I am not seeing that stuff anymore. I don't have to worry about that with my kid when she goes out and takes the bus across town. So I'm all for it. I don't have any problem with it at all. I'm not like, stay out, you Californians. I know a couple Californians, and they're all right. You know what I mean? My wife's from Arizona. That's cool.
Yeah, that's where I'm at, and Josh is in California, and then
there you go. Yeah,
Corey's way up in Idaho. So
I grew up in California.
That's true. That is true. Yeah,
there you go.
Yeah. So
I was just in Idaho by accident. I got Googled and I ended up in Idaho. Yeah.
You got what?
I got Googled. We were supposed to go
Oh,
we were headed to Montana and we were cutting through Wyoming and suddenly we were in Idaho and I was like,
Oh,
we're in
no.
Idaho. Let's get some potatoes. We found a cider place that was badass. It was really good and probably had too much cider. But yeah, I don't even remember where we were, but it was cool, Yeah.
So
Anyway.
So how did you get started screen printing? Did that just come from your love of music and that whole
No, actually, it was totally back afterwards. I was in
Okay.
high school and I needed a job, and there was this guy who was trying to headhunt students to hire for really cheap. He was like, "Hey," he'd come to my art teacher and say, "Hey, I've got a sweatshop down the street, and if you know any kids who need a really crappy job, I'll pay them $4 an hour, and I'll teach them art skills." And so I fell for it. I took it hook, line, and sinker. And next thing I know, I was like out there with a leaf blower as well and mowing the lawn at all his properties and stuff, as well as getting like mosquito bites all over my face while I'm screen printing horrible UT t-shirts and stuff. That was my start into screen printing. But then when I got into college at UT and I went for printmaking, so smushing all kinds of stuff on stuff and stenciling things through stuff. And I don't know, I thought it was really fun. I've always liked duplicating stuff because then you can make booklets.
Yeah.
And those booklets can then tell a story. And I always thought that was really awesome too.
So did you get into kind of the zine, doing zines and stuff like that? Is that
the mermaid book, Narita, was I've made, I guess, about 5 issues of it, I guess.
Right.
And I set them up. They're a weird size, and I had to hash that out with Mark actually for actual print production and to fit into a normal comic like plastic sleeve. They're not the right size because I made them the right size to go through a Xerox copy machine to do legal size paper, which is 8.5 by 14, and then you can fold it over and you've got a 7 by 8.5 book. So I format all my comics like that because I want to be able to do them that way. The other thing you can do is you can take an 8.5 by 11 and fold it in quarters, staple it, cut off the ends, and you've got a little mini zine.
I've done some. I got my.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know if this is the same. I got this kind of format here where you cut it in the middle.
Yep. Yeah. Basically, that's the same. Yeah, same thing.
Yeah.
But so I got into doing that, and I started selling those little zines at shows and stuff. And then a friend hooked me up with a risograph printer,
nice.
which is totally janky. This thing is like the Mad Max of Xerox copiers, but in color, in Japanese. So you're what?
So I've seen risograph print all the time with like mini comics, but I'm curious exactly how it works. Isn't it just like a Xerox machine, but does that have different toner, or how does that work?
It's got a drum inside of it that's filled with ink.
Right.
And that drum spins, and when you create a master, right? It's made out of thin rice paper that wraps around the drum. That's perforated at 400 dpi, and when the paper goes through, the drum rolls with the paper, and it pushes that ink through those tiny little perforations onto the paper, and you can get really high-res images if you try.
Oh, cool.
And fades and all kinds of stuff. And you do one color at a time. So you run your paper through, say I want to print the blue first, and then you run it back through and you do the black or red and black or whatever. And you change out this big ass drum. You open up the front door, you take the whole ink drum out, and you swap in a whole new one. You put it back in, and then the robot says, "I don't know what just happened. I'm broken." And then you have to restart it. And then you have to go in the back and grease the gears. And yeah.
Oh wow, that's more complex than I thought. I thought it was just a different kind of like a Xerox machine with toner. But
it actually it's a weird beast. It's actually a soy-based ink too. So yeah, it's liquid ink inside. It's crazy.
Yeah, I've got a bunch of risograph printed comics and stuff that I got from indie shows and stuff like that, and zines and stuff like that. It's a cool look, but I never knew exactly what the process was. So that's pretty
weird.
Cool.
It's fun, and man, it's fast. Like if you push the button, it's like zoop 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 zoop. It'll just shoot the copies out like full, like exactly the same every time.
Yeah,
except with terrible registration.
That's the charm of it. I love that off registration stuff. I mean, that's especially I love like old wax packs and stuff like that, like the trading cards and with that
Well, nowadays people will pay for a Photoshop plugin to fake that bad registration.
Yeah.
Yes, they do. Yeah,
I bought a few. Yeah.
Yeah, the Rising Graph is perfect for wheat paste because it can do 11 by 17. So band flyers and stuff, man, like 1 or 2 colors, and then you go smush those things around town. It's perfect. It's awesome. So
that's awesome. So that was sort of your, I guess your introduction to like comics and stuff like that. And then now you're kind of diving into, I guess, traditional publishing through like with the Kickstarter and everything. So you said you've got built like a following and everything. Is that through the music or is that?
Tiny following.
Sometimes that's all you need. I mean, you definitely funded already. So I mean, I know Mark's probably some of that, but I'm sure whatever following you had is.
My wife is also a part of that. She knows how to use Facebook. I don't know how to use Facebook.
Yeah.
I don't. It's like, what? This is gobbledygook. I'm so confused. But she's like a Facebook queen from back in the day, and we used to own a small art gallery in Austin, and so we have the golden email list of the art people who like the arts and want to support the arts in Austin. So a lot of that came from there, and then Mark has been really helpful with it, and then yes, I do have a little bit of a following on Instagram, and I just started a Twitter account like a couple of months ago, so that's pretty fledgling at this point. But social media, I'm not really good at it, but you just kind of chip away at it, and eventually something happens. I don't know. I'm scared of YouTube. I haven't even tried that, or TikTok.
See, that's the only one that I really like. I don't really go like Facebook. I don't go on that much, and I don't know. I don't know. I guess I don't know. I'm just partial to video, but it's you got to kind of find what you're comfortable with, and not get too sucked into the whole where you just like doom scrolling and all that kind of stuff. I mean, otherwise that just sucks the time away from the time you could spend doing your artwork and everything.
Yeah. And I try and time myself. In the morning, I have 15 minutes to do all the social media stuff that I'm going to do for the day.
That's good, yeah.
Besides, like responding to people, somebody sends me a message pertaining to the comic book, then I try and get back to them. But as far as like following people, unfollowing people, liking people's stuff, or whatever you're going to do to get the robot to like you and the algorithm to work properly, I've got it down to where it takes 15, 20 minutes. You just boom, wham, bam, thank you, man. You know what I'm saying? So.
Yeah, definitely. So like, what kind of stuff what are you posting on your Instagram then?
On my Instagram, I'm posting panels from my books that I'm working kind of as I go, and I have it set up as a grid post. So it's either 3 individual. It's always 3 or more. I have to do them in series of 3, so that when you go to the page, if you scroll, you can see it's like a large splash image on the page. But I'll do. I kind of try and do like little sections of the comic to kind of give away, like, oh, this is happening, or this is a cool shot, or this is a splash panel that looked really cool, to pique people's interest, to get them kind of excited about maybe what the story is. And at first, I was trying to push people towards Tapas or Webtoon, but I found both of those platforms less than satisfying and heavily dominated by like anime. And manga. So it's definitely just not the platform for me. So I was really looking for something, and then when Mark came along with Lesser Known Comics, I was like, well, it kind of opened up this whole thing for me, like, oh, wait a minute, people are making comics that I would like and that I would want to read, and I should be doing that. I should not be trying to contend with the manga set, because they're just like blinders on. They're not.
Yeah.
They don't want to.
And I always tell people there's comics for everyone. It just depends, depends what you're into, and sometimes you got to seek it out. But believe me, if there's something you're into, there's a comic book about it. It's not. I mean, it's just like prose, like your regular books. It's no matter. I mean, there's every kind of. I mean, especially in the States, people tend to think, oh, comics, oh, it's superhero, or maybe now a little more manga, but there's so much diversity in comics out there. You just gotta seek it out. But yeah, and like there's just a lot of great indie stuff. So I mean, and what I've seen of your book so far, I mean, it's going to be, I mean, it's a good, you know, addition to some of that cool stuff that's out there. And Mark's doing some really innovative, you know, publishing some really cool stuff that I haven't seen, you know, elsewhere. So he's finding some really cool talent. I think the name of his company, it's, I mean, I keep saying, hopefully at some point it becomes an oxymoron where everyone knows lesser known comics, but it's kind of cool because it is kind of, I mean, it's kind of a cool statement because it is sort of kind of the underground stuff, at least right now. And he's given a lot of people a chance to use their voice in the comics medium and everything. So
absolutely. Yeah. He also seems like a really nice guy.
Oh yeah,
you know? And that's always, I'm always kind of like, you know, because I was a bartender for 15 years. So when you meet somebody who's a nice guy, it's like, is he gonna run off with the tip jar? Like, what's going on? Why just be so nice? You know what I mean? Like, but I think he actually is just a genuinely nice guy. I'm like, okay, cool. And you got 2 kids. Those kids got a nice dad. That's nice.
Exactly.
You know. So
exactly. So I'm definitely glad you guys found each other, and I'm definitely gonna have to contribute to the Kickstarter so I can check out the book and everything because it looks great. I don't know, Corey and Josh, do you have anything that you wanted to ask David? I know
not really.
Josh. I know Josh is. I mean, he's like he's interested in everything too. So I'm sure he's. I mean, a lot of the stuff you're doing resonates with him as well.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I'm already pretty interested. So out of curiosity, like, did I miss it, or have you talked about kind of like what's the basic kind of pitch for the book? Did I miss that?
Well, the basic pitch is Mark Bolan walks into the background of the book and starts talking about how he's been dancing since he was 12.
Okay.
And then, sorry, that was a horrible inside joke from the.
It was a good callback.
Yeah. Basic pitch for the book? You mean like the elevator pitch?
Yeah. Just like because I feel like I either missed it or anyhow. So sorry.
Or I didn't say it. Maybe.
Well, there we go.
Okay, basic pitch. All right, I'm in the elevator. I'm like, no, man, you got to check out this book. Check it out. So we got this Korean vampire. She's 500 years old, and she's traveling with her familiar, right? You know what I mean? But her familiar is also kind of like her daughter. She's raised her from birth. Her daughter only once has met her twin brother that she was separated from. They were separated at birth, and her twin brother's like found her. So he's like trying to find his sister, and he doesn't know that she's operating as a familiar for her mom, right? So it gets real complicated, right? She's not actually her mother's, is like her adopted mother. You know what I'm saying? And it gets real hairy after that because girls start vanishing from this brothel in town, which is like, you know, if you're going to kill somebody, you should just take them to the brothel and then kill them. They'll dispose of the body and and it gets real gnarly after that. Yeah.
It sounds gnarly.
Cool.
And then you did mention that it's going to be spanning like a really long period of history. So is it like going to be like focusing solely on this one point in time, or is it going to be like chunks of different segments in time?
The 5 books will skip around a little bit, but it's just to progress the I guess you could say main character, the vampire hunter Chung Ho, who's the brother who's trying to find his sister, his long lost sister or whatever.
That's so badass.
In the first book, he's kind of a newbie. He doesn't know anything about vampires. It certainly doesn't know anything about vampire hunting, so he's caught unawares when it happens. He's like, oh shit, you know what I mean? He gets left like just with his ass handed to him in an alley bleeding to death somewhere, right? So the second book, he will have tracked them. And it takes place in 1900, which is kind of when the Trans-Siberian Railway was starting to be built across Russia. And Japan was also building railroad infrastructure across Korea before they invaded Korea and took control. So the vampire is then going to start to use trains to move around and get away from areas and transport herself, right? So it's going to follow like wherever there are trains. So the next comic is set in Siberia, and as far as it spanning long periods of time, the thought process is, for example, like the first book opens with the scene of like, it opens with the scene of her following these Mongol soldiers in the Korean forest as like a little girl before she's ever even turned into a vampire. And it's a flashback memory that she hadn't previously had. And she had kind of, because she kind of has forgotten things as she's gotten older or whatever. But then it'll cut to present day and she's laying on the ground with a stake shoved right through her eye. Someone had just like tried to kill her, but it didn't work, right? They didn't stab her in the right place. They didn't cut her head off, whatever you got to do to kill a vampire. They just shoved a stake in her eye. And she's laying there. It stabbed her brain, so it jogged some kind of memory about her childhood. So she pulls that thing off, pan out, and there's all these dead Siberian vampire hunters all around her, right? So that's how I'm planning on making it span long periods of time by doing these weird flashbacks where it's kind of it's fucking with her mental state and like where she's like what's going on. So,
That sounds awesome.
Okay, you definitely got another backer. I'm going to back this thing
Yeah.
up and put up the call. So well, I would have done it anyway because it's one of Mark's books, but but it sounds awesome. So so this was a project that you started during the pandemic, right?
yeah.
So I mean, there's so much cool stuff. Just that whole, it's such a weird, point in time where people just, they had time to work on and put, the people that took advantage of that could. I mean, obviously, some people had some mental stuff to deal with because it's, everything going on. But the people that were able to kind of take advantage of that and put, use it creatively. I mean, there's so much cool stuff coming out of that, and I think we're going to start seeing more now that we're, I guess a couple years away from that. So it's really cool to see what people were focusing on in that whole, the whole couple years,
And I had to like really, really try to do something creative because I'm a general contractor. I just work construction. So everybody's stuck at home and they're looking around going, that's broken and that's broken and that's broken.
Yeah.
My phone was just ringing off the hook. I couldn't stop working. So this was no. So I was like, all right, I'm gonna wake up every day at like 5.
Yeah.
Kid doesn't go to school. The wife works from home. I'm gonna wake up at 5 and I'm gonna work for like 3 hours. Then I'll make coffee. Then I'll go to work. Like, so I just was like pouring myself into like making sure that I did something creative before I went to work. Otherwise, I mean, I really felt like I was just chipping away at my soul every day that I went to work. So
wow, so that's a different story than I would expect. Because when you hear, oh, I did this during the pandemic, you usually think, oh, the person's got some time off. They got a lot of time on their hands. For you, it's like the opposite. So
yeah. I just stacked it on. I was like, oh, I'm gonna really, really have to want this if I want to do it. You know what I mean? So.
Well, I don't know. It sounds like you created a hell of a comic. Now is this going to be a continuing story? How many pages is the comic book?
The comic itself is 29 pages, and I think each one of them is set to be between 28, 29, 30 pages.
Oh, cool. All right.
So there'll be 5 comics planned, and then there's the novella, which is 2 parts, and that's about 200 pages of just like prose. Just
that's cool. That's
no pictures.
Is it the same story? Or is that a different story from in the same kind of universe?
Same story. It's just it's dealing with larger themes that are only going to be hinted at. I want the comic book to really follow the Chung Ho character, the vampire hunter that has to kind of level up his skill as he moves along, because he becomes integral in the novella, and he becomes like a bit of a badass, and you don't know why or how he becomes a badass. You're like, how? What? Well, go read the comic book and you'll find out. You know what I mean? So, because I didn't want to like. So often a book is made and it's awesome, and then someone makes a graphic novel or a comic book of the book, and it's a retelling of the same story. And sometimes I feel like it gets watered down, and then Netflix picks it up, and then Netflix just waters it down even more. What I wanted to do was have a story that was told, and then in between you supplement it with the graphic novel. So the graphic novel stands on its own. It's its own thing. You could read that without reading the book, or you could read the book without reading that. But the two of them would work hand in hand to where it would kind of, I don't know, they would help bolster each other, as it were.
Nice.
But,
yeah.
Anyway,
Have
That's
you
cool.
have you seen Let the Right One In?
yeah,
Yeah. It
oh
kind of
yeah,
because you mentioned the trains and there's that
yep.
sequence in the trains, or even the American remake's good too. Let Me In's good.
I haven't seen that one. I haven't. But.
It's honestly it's just as good. It's what's his name? The guy that just did the most recent Batman movie. I forgot his name, but he directed it, and it's got
Oh
some
really?
it's got
Christopher
some
Nolan?
no
Oh wait,
No.
the
Whoa,
recent.
dude.
Never mind.
yeah.
I'm just old.
Where you been? Where you been, Josh?
Hanging out
No,
with Mark Mullen in the green room.
yeah, but it definitely sounds like if you're into that kind of stuff, that because with the whole idea with her traveling with her familiar and all that kind of stuff and the so that's I'm not like a huge vampire guy, but that's like one of my favorite movies. You know, both versions of it.
And neither am I. And I don't know if have you ever watched much like Korean horror films? Like
I've watched a few. Yeah.
like
Well, I
Old
watched,
Boy and Sympathy for
I've
Lady
seen Old Boy.
Vengeance.
Yeah, I've seen Old Boy. Yeah, Old Boy and Sympathy for the Devil and what was it? Or
Sympathy
no,
for Mr. Vengeance and then
Mr.
Sympathy
Vengeance
for
and
Lady
Lady
Vengeance.
Vengeance and what was the other
Yeah.
one? Wasn't there another one?
There's another one by the same director called Bakjui, which
Okay,
is
I'm not sure if I've seen it. It's been a while since I've
translates
seen it.
translates to Thirst, and that's a vampire
Okay.
Korean horror film that's set in modern day about like a Catholic priest who contracts vampirism while he's in Africa or whatever. That's a great Korean vampire story. It's twisted and it's just funny enough and it's like real super bloody and like ridiculous, over the top. It's great. It's so good.
Yeah, I had a kick a few years back where I really started. I was really diving into some of the Korean horror stuff. It's been a while since I've watched it. Other than I think isn't what was the zombie one that was so good? I don't know if it was Korean. I think it was Korean. Oh man, what was it called? Train to Busan. Was that? Have you
I
seen
don't
that?
know. I haven't seen
Oh,
that one. No.
it's on Netflix. It's awesome. It's one of the best zombie
Okay.
movies. Yeah, definitely check
Yeah,
it out.
yeah.
I think it was on Netflix. It could have got pulled by now, but I don't know. But it is so good. Yeah,
Right
the
on.
Koreans know how to do horror for sure.
Yes, they do.
Yeah, so I'm anxious to and that because I was kind of wondering, like you said in the beginning, like where you pulled that out, like why am I making this Korean horror book? But if that's kind of your influence, I could see that. So yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And also like the if it was set in Japan, like that whole culture and everything is so sewn up. Like people have done it to death. It's wonderful. It's like got its own like crazy diaspora of awesome stuff that's come out of Japan, and I really it's kind of intimidating. So I didn't really want to contend with that. I was like, I'll try somewhere else. What about Korea or Thailand? Could have done it in Thailand. But I also have some friends who moved to Seoul, artists, and they're always talking about how cool it is and how just totally interesting the place is for art and for all sorts of various reasons. So I'm real interested. I want to go someday.
Yeah, I'd love to too. Well, hey, you guys have any questions? My son's got something he wants to ask me. Sorry.
Yeah.
Josh or Corey? Hold on. Yeah.
Well, I was just like kind of digging when you were talking about sort of. Oh, sorry, I was overhearing the conversation there. So I was sort of wondering about just like when you were talking about working and like the need to do something creative or you go nuts. Like, is that something that you constantly kind of feel like where if you aren't tapping that like creative resource, it'll just drive you nuts? Or I don't know. I was just curious about that because I empathize and relate to that a lot.
I feel like if I go too long without doing something creative, whether it's art or music in some capacity, I can start it just builds up, and eventually I start becoming this like horrible curmudgeon troll that no one wants to live with. And my family's like, "Hey, why don't you draw a picture, man? Why don't you just sit down and write a song? Like,
yeah,
you're acting like an asshole. Like, cut it out." So yeah, I mean that's kind of how it works for me. And I'll go through phases like the comic book's almost done, the Kickstarter's almost done, and I will be like, that was crazy, awesome. All right, now I'm gonna go record an album. So my band is all geared up, and we've been practicing these new songs and writing new songs, and we're about to record a full length. And then I'll be in music mode as much as I possibly can. So I'm trying to get out of the construction game just because I want to hang on to my fingers so I can still draw and play guitar and do whatever else. You know, working with saws is kind of not the best thing if you want to keep your digits, intact. Yeah, it's pretty bad. I did actually. I shot a nail into my finger, in this finger. Yeah, right through the knuckle, man. It was bad.
Jeez.
I was framing something, and the wood like exploded, and there was a ricochet, and the nail just went bink and stuck in about, I don't know, like a quarter of an inch. And I was like, man, that's gonna suck. Couldn't hold a pencil for a while. I couldn't hold my drumsticks for a while. And I had a gig where I was supposed to be playing guitar, and I was like, I can hold a pick if I just like tape it to my hand. It'll be fine. Sure. No one will notice. And my bandmates were like, dude, you were playing so terribly. What happened? I was like, well, I shot myself with a nail gun. And they're like, God, that's stupid. Why would you do that? I'm like, well,
you did it on purpose.
Because I'm stupid? I don't know. But yeah. And of course, I couldn't tell the client either, because then it makes me look like like they shouldn't be paying me money to like build things for them. They're like, you did what? Do you have insurance? I'm like, yeah, relax, man, relax.
Oh man.
But it's the age old. She turned me into a newt, but I got better.
Yeah, I've almost shot myself several times with
That
nail
doesn't
guns.
surprise me.
One time we were framing my uncle's house, and you get going, and you're like, ding, 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 right?
Yeah.
And I don't know. I think I was like 22, so it's stupid. And anyway, I was going, and I didn't realize that my cousin was on the other side, and he shot through like some real thin plywood or something.
Oh no!
Sorry.
You paused.
It keeps cutting out. It hit my air hose right in front of my chest. Like
shit!
It pierced my air hose, and it was like a couple inches from my chest, and I was like, all right. We gotta be a little bit more careful.
Yeah. That's like the cigarette packet, like stopping the bullet.
Right,
You know what I mean?
yeah.
You're like, I'm glad I had that metal cigarette case.
Yeah.
You have to, David. You have to understand the amount of times Corey has cheated death. It's astounding, really. He just had a. Yeah, go ahead, Corey. Give a little.
Well, I was just gonna say, what you guys don't know is I'm actually a Korean vampire. So
Now it's coming full circle.
Yeah,
now I'm starting to see what's going on.
Can't shove a stake in your eye. It's not going to do the job. You're just going to wake up and have a bad dream.
Yeah, if that nail had been dipped in garlic or silver, I would have been toast. But,
You've been foobarred.
yeah.
Yeah, no, my story's always pale in comparison to my dad's stories because he's a paramedic.
Oh yeah.
So, and then he was a nurse in the ER forever. And he said some guy came in complaining about a headache. He's like, I don't know why I keep having these crazy headaches, man. It's like really bothering me. They're like, hey, well, let's do an MRI and see what's going on. Dude had a nail between the two lobes of his brain. He didn't have any recollection of anybody shooting him in the head with a nail gun. And it's like, well, man,
Yeah.
we can't get that out of there because we might kill you. Like this isn't gonna. Just if it. How long has it been there? The brain tissue had already grown around it. It was like, whoa, what?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, I've lucked out with head injuries. The worst thing is I had a brain swelling one time, and that's
pretty bad. What do you mean the worst thing? Like,
you know.
There's a list. Yeah, there's a list. So I mean, I haven't
God.
had a nail stuck in between two lobes, so I'm doing pretty well. But I don't want to turn this into Corey tells horrific stories again. I'm curious to David, tell us about your process. Are you full traditional? Are you digital traditional? Are you digital? Like what do you do?
I'm full digital now. I did start out trying to do traditional just because I'm a real cheapskate, and I was like, paper costs a lot less than an iPad. But then I dove in again when the pandemic hit, and I wanted to try and really do this full on. And I bought myself a little iPad and Apple Pencil, and it started escalating from there. I now use Clip Studio to do my
Yeah.
illustrations.
Yeah.
Because I can do all my lettering. I can like pull the panel boxes the way I want. I can make mats to go over stuff. I can do all kinds of things. I also really like the brushes that it comes with. But for Yuriko, I actually made a set of brushes out of my thumbprint. So just use my
Hmm.
thumb with some ink, and that's what all the texture and stuff is in the background.
That's
So
cool. Yeah, there's a lot of. It looks almost kind of. It looks like it could be traditional because there's a lot of. Looks like a lot of kind of hand drawn texture that you added to it. So
yeah, and that's kind of what I'm always going for when I am drawing digitally. Is I don't
right,
want it to look digital,
right.
because I really love the quality of hand drawn stuff. But at the same time, I love the fact that I can draw backwards. When you're drawing digitally, you can erase stuff, like
Yeah,
fully erase
yeah.
stuff, or you can draw with a white ink on a dark background, and it's
Oh
gonna
yeah.
just completely fully do that. It's also allowed me to like experiment with different looks and feels. So the style of Yuriko is completely different from the style of Narita, the mermaid comic. And then I have another comic that's in the works called Yuki the Dragon Slayer. It's about a kind of a cosmic middle schooler who slays dragons because that's what her family does, kind of traditional or whatever. And I've got issue 1 scripted and all ready to go. I've drawn like the first 4 pages or whatever, and it's just like a big gash in the sky, and out of that comes Yuki, just this ball of flame. Boom! She lands right in front of my daughter's middle school, and a dragon follows her out of there, and then they just proceed to just completely destroy her middle school. Like the gym gets terrorized, the cafeteria gets upended, the principal's office just gets completely demolished. I was like, what are your teachers gonna think of this? And she's like, I don't care. Like, it's just a total Calvin and Hobbes thing for me. I'm like, yes, destroy the middle school. That sounds like a great comic book.
Yeah,
But that style is much more like screen tones and stuff like that, as opposed to trying to do like real dark textures or like ink washes or stuff like that. So
yeah. So what's your like? Was I guess kind of how did you get into comic? What was kind of comics? What was kind of your gateway? Did you collect comics as a kid, or what kind of were you into? The kind of drove what you're doing creatively now.
well, yeah, I was definitely huge into comics as a kid, and I was a comic book dealer. I didn't deal drugs, but I dealt comic
Yeah,
books. So like at the dawn, like when Spawn was coming out, and Wildcats, and like Cyberforce, and all those creators jumped from X-Men, and they went over and started Image Comics and Top Cow and Danger Girl and all this stuff. I'd go to meet my grandma at the mall after school, and she would always give me and my brother like a couple dollars to go play video games at the arcade. Kids don't know about arcades anymore.
yeah,
But anyway, I would save the money and I would go over and I would buy comic books, and I would always buy 2 issues of each one. That way I could go to school and I could casually read it in front of the other kids. And they'd be like, "What is that?" And I'm like, this is Spawn issue number 4. It's like, Greg Capullo's first comic in drawing for Todd McFarlane. That's pretty good. He's pretty good. I don't know if you've ever heard of Greg Capullo. And they're like, "No, man. Well, hey, can I have it?" I'm like, "You can't have it, but you can buy it from me." So I'd sell it to him for a markup, and then I'd go back and I'd buy more comics. So it was like yeah, it was totally illegal and awful, and I felt.
Oh, I don't know if that's illegal. That's what everyone does. That's what
Yeah,
comic
it's
book
true.
dealers do.
yeah, exactly. So anyway, yeah, that was how I got into it. I always loved
open a comic book store with that.
I know. That was one of my. I was like, art galleries, kind of like a comic book store. Can we sell comic books? And my wife's like, no.
Yeah. So
but,
yeah. So let's talk about the art gallery then. How did that all come about?
Oh God, the art gallery was a VHS store that failed to switch to DVDs, and then when Netflix came out and destroyed all video stores, they were like, "Well, we're finally gonna fold," and I'm like, "Yeah." I mean, I love my VHS, but come on, man, So they folded, and they were right next door to the bar where I was working, and so the bar owner was like, "Hey, I'm gonna take over the lease for that building because something cool could happen there." would you be interested? And so my wife and I were like, yeah, we'll take over the lease and we'll start something. And it kind of snowballed from there. And she said, "Hey, you're an art fag. You know a bunch of art fags. Why don't we start an art gallery? And you can call up all your friends and say, hey, let's show our art." And I was like, "Yeah, okay, sounds good." And that worked for a good 7 years. And that developed into she started teaching yoga out of there, which is what she does full time now. I learned how to reseat a toilet, which is what I do full time now. Um, she also we were doing like private events and stuff, so private parties. So I was bartending there as well. So it was like a real multifaceted kind of space. But it was great to be able to show my artwork on a regular basis and meet other artists and be involved in all kinds of like what's happening in the art scene. We were hated and despised by all the other art entities in Austin. They absolutely hated us.
Why is that? Why is that?
We got reviews from the local rag, from the local paper, and they would always talk about how cool our art shows were.
Oh, cool.
But we were not wealthy people,
Right.
and 90% of arts entities, people who own
Yeah.
galleries and stuff, they just have a shitload of money. So they're like, "Hey, I'll bring this bougie ass person in to meet this bougie ass artist and sell this bougie art to this bougie person," and that's how it works.
Right.
We were not bougie. We were like, "Your art's great. Sure, you can show it." It turns out the person is like 14 and lives on the street. And I was like, "I don't know. Your art was great." But we would deny, we would turn people down whose art was terrible. And it's like, "Ugh, you're a professor at like Concordia University? Ugh, sorry, man. Like, you suck. I don't know what to tell you." You know what I mean? So we were kind of like the black sheep of the whole art scene, which was great. It was very
You need
DIY
that.
and down to earth, you know.
Yeah, you need that. You need that. I mean, I'm all, I mean, but, just like with your music, I'm sure if you do punk rock, it's kind of like, you're kind of,
Yeah.
throwing a finger, towards the system
Yeah.
and everything. So doing that with the gallery sounds like the next, evolution. So
Yeah, we also we got sponsored quite a bit. My wife is like magic with getting sponsorships. So we would have cases and cases of sponsored vodka just in our house at any given point in time. And I was like, "Man, I don't really drink vodka. That's why is it, what's with the vodka?" And she's like, "It's free. Shut up." And I'm like, "Okay, yeah, all right, I'll shut up. It's free." So that was cool. We'd also get like Luna bars and weird yoga props and things like that. And I'm like, I'm gonna lay around and eat a Luna bar and then like drink a bunch of vodka. I'm chilling. I'm like, sure, man, I could survive on this, you know. So yeah, that was the life for a while. We were pretty broke then. So yeah.
yeah,
Anyway.
that's pretty cool. And so it wasn't just your art. You were showing, featuring other artists and everything. And
Oh yeah, we had artists come from, overseas that would ship their art to be in group shows or solo shows. And the way we had it set up was like, hey, submit just your work to us, and if we like it, we'll put you in a group show. If you're not an asshole and your artwork is actually as good as it looks like it is on your website, then maybe we'll talk about doing a two-person show. And we very rarely did like a single person show.
right.
But yeah, as far as the art would go, it was very proletariat. We were like, hey, just don't be an asshole and we'll be your friend and we'll try and sell your artwork for you. And if we do, then great. And if not, then well, you got to show in an art gallery and you can put it on your resume or whatever. So ended up with a lot of really good friends. I was actually helping a friend today that I met through the art gallery, who is doing an installation piece for a public works commission here in like Central Texas. And it's this massive like aluminum sculpture, and we were trying to figure out how to counterbalance it on a platform. And it was pretty legit. I felt like I was going to get crushed a couple times. So that's when you're making real art. And you're like, "Oh, look at that.
Yeah.
This is cool. Right on." So,
That's awesome. That's awesome, man. You got a pretty interesting story how you done through. I mean, it's kind of what Mark was saying. Davido, he's just really big into this indie art scene and everything like that. And I mean,
yeah.
and it sounds like the comics are kind of, you're carrying on that tradition with the comic books and everything too, because it definitely, I mean, judging by the artwork, and definitely anyone who hasn't, click on the link and definitely check out the Kickstarter and look at some of the artwork that's there, because it's really a kind of a unique style and everything that you're doing with that. And it sounds like, from what you said, compared to your other projects, you tend to kind of work in different styles as well. So I don't know, what are some of your what are some of your influences? I mean, you said you kind of got into comics around the Image, or you were real big around the kind of the Image, Image
Era.
boom when they first came out. But but it looks like there's some different influences other than Image in your work, at least from what I've seen, like, from the Kickstarter and everything.
So Frank Miller, huge influence, obviously.
I could see
that was the first time I'd ever seen titties in a book, and I was like, "What? I'll take 2. I'll sell one." But So Frank Miller was a huge influence. Travis Charest, the guy who was working on Wildcats and stuff. He kind of disappeared. I don't know what happened to that guy. He doesn't really do illustration.
Yeah, maybe
anymore,
he doesn't do he probably, I would be surprised if he doesn't do illustrate. He probably, because his stuff was very designy. And then, but it translated really well to comics, but he could be definitely doing some more like commercial type illustration. I don't know.
Yeah. But that was a huge influence for me. And then Jim Lee and all of the big names from back in the day. I did not like Rob Liefeld. I know that, and I didn't know that there was a subset of humans on Earth who also didn't like Rob Liefeld's anatomy. But I was like, man, this is kind of not correct. Something's wrong here. Like, I'm looking at my anatomy book, and this isn't working out. But then a friend of mine who's also a total comic buff was like, well, I watched this documentary, and a bunch of other comic artists were kind of standing up for him and saying, hey, he was prolific. He just churned out pages. So, they could throw him a book and say, hey, we need this by Wednesday. And he's like, you got it. Boom, done. Like, he would just like crank them out. So at some point in time, if, your production rate is high enough, then people can't diss it or they can't knock it, because they're like, well, he's doing it. So
you can't argue with his success either. I mean, he definitely, he seems like an interesting, decent enough guy. But like you said, I wasn't too big into his artwork. I
mean, I learned something from that too. I thought, like, hey, if I just churn out like page after page after page after page, eventually I'll have a finished comic, and no one will be able to deny that I at least made a comic book. It's done. It's 40 pages or it's 30 pages or whatever. You just got to crank them all out and then be like, all right, cool. And you learn along the way, so I don't know. There's something to be said for that Stephen King style of like, I'm going to work on it every day. And most of it's going to be shit. And then some of it's going to, I'm sorry. I'm probably not supposed to cut.
No, you're fine. You're fine.
Okay.
So are you kind of still on that same schedule that when you were creating the book then, as far as you kind of wake up early and do more pages and stuff, as far as, because you said you've got, this isn't the end of the story. You're going to continue on with it and everything. So
yeah. As far as my workflow goes for working on comics, I'm not in like full on panic mode where I'm afraid that I'm going to, lose my house and my wife's going to divorce me because we're destitute, living on the street under some cardboard boxes. So I'm not like go for the construction work right now. I can take a job. Like, I just finished a double bathroom remodel over the summer, and then now I've got like a month of downtime, and then the next job will start. So I can a little more leisurely think, like, plan things out and say, okay, so this month I can really dedicate a lot more time to that. That's kind of how my workflow is going at this point. But I'm hoping to, get some commission work and do some work for other people. Like, I'd love to illustrate other people's ideas.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah,
I think my ideas are great, but they're not as good as most other people's ideas. So I would like to like put images to other people's work, see how that goes.
Yeah, that's the one thing that I'm finally kind of getting the opposite, where I'm actually getting, I guess, I'm thinking about getting brave enough to actually have other people work on like my stories, because I've got all these different ideas and I know I'll never have time to illustrate them all. So I've been
Yeah.
collaborating with somebody on this other project. It's a commercial project, but yeah, I mean, I was always kind of, I'm gonna be a one man show, and I'll write it and draw it and do all that stuff. And now as I get older, I'm like, I'm never gonna be able to get all these ideas out. So maybe need to collaborate on some stuff too after I finish this one project that I'm working on. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot of great stuff out there that you know, and there's so many opportunities now for artists that there weren't, like, I know when I was coming up, because like even back in the day, back in the Image days, I mean, to
How are you
publish
going
a
to knock
comic
on the
back then,
how do you knock on the door of Image Comics or Top Cow?
Yeah.
Like, it's impossible. Like, what? You know?
yeah.
Totally unattainable. And I think that's what stopped me from trying earlier in my life or whatever, is just that, it seemed completely unattainable. It's like, yeah, that'd be great, but I'm never going to be good enough, and I'm never going to draw in the right proper style to where Jim Lee's going to accept me to, or whatever. Whereas now it's totally accessible. Like, I'm here talking to you about it, and you can get on social media and you can shout your brains out about it. You can go and table at a Comic-Con. You don't have to be a big name creator. It's kind of awesome.
Yeah, and you can crowdfund and raise the money to produce the book, and you can do like print on demand, where you don't have to print 2,000 copies in order to get the book done. You're not sitting on a pallet of books that you got to try to get rid of. You can just print at a time. So there's so many awesome opportunities now for comic book artists on the indie scene and everything too. So I mean, it's pretty amazing. It's amazing to me. I mean, I'm just like, I think, I'm pretty blessed to be in this time right now where I can publish my own stuff and run Kickstarters and all that kind of stuff. Because I don't know, I've always kind of been more of an indie guy. I loved when I was coming up, reading Marvel, DC, all that stuff. But and I don't know, I always wanted to create my own. I didn't want to create Spider-Man, work on Spider-Man. I wanted to make my own version of Spider-Man or whatever. So
yeah. I actually had an idea for a book that is probably illegal to make, but it's a spin-off of Batman, where it's like set in the like 1996 in the like ghetto of Gotham, where even Batman doesn't go there, because there's no like, the premise is that it's just like, it's drugs and it's like petty theft. It's not enough to attract a big name like Batman, right? So all the characters are like, oh yeah, the Bat never comes around here because we're too small time. Like, big deal. It's just a cops and robbers type situation. He's off battling the Joker, or he's saving the universe or some shit with the Justice League, whatever. He doesn't come around here. So this girl's dad takes up the mantle in the local neighborhood. Well, he ends up dying, and so his daughter like tries to find the killers, but it's more of like a kind of a psychological coming of age type situation, where she does what any kid would do who doesn't feel like they have any options. She goes and she gets a gun and she tries to confront these dudes who murdered her father, and they just, she gets her ass handed to her, and they pistol whip her and throw her out in the street, and that's it. And then she kind of like stumbles into a dojo, which is kind of based on a karate place that I went to when I was a kid. It's called Soryu Karate, and it was nothing but black dudes, and I was the only little Mexican kid there. And so she stumbles in there, and that's like the end of book one, where she's like, okay, now I need to get prepared. If I'm going to do this, I have to do this for real. But it's like a play on the whole Batman thing, but it's also a play on the fact that I don't think DC or Marvel or Batman or any of those characters are fully describing or talking to kids in the ghetto, kids who live in poor communities, and people who live in parts of town where you don't really want to go because it's dangerous, or there's high crime, or there's just not a lot of money. So why go? There's no nice restaurants, that kind of shit. So, and I think that maybe I could drop enough hints to let people know that it's kind of set in Gotham, quote unquote.
I don't think you have to. I mean, you could do. I mean, just like with Watchmen. I mean, Watchmen was, Alan Moore wanted to. DC, I think, acquired all these characters from Charlton. I think it was Charlton Comics, and he had wrote wrote the script using those characters, and then I guess he was told that he couldn't use those characters, so he just kind of changed them around enough. So you just create a stand-in for Batman and a stand-in for Gotham City, and you could easily tell that story. You know, and everyone will know. Everyone will know. Oh, yeah, this is the Batman archetype, but it's not Batman. So you could definitely get away with it. Just don't use Batman. Just have some other. You know,
I could just call him Deflator Mouse, like in The Tick. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Something like that. Yeah. Yeah.
No, I'd get in trouble for that for sure.
Well, but there's a number of ways you can go, but yeah, I mean, there's a number of people that you know you can. It's sort of I wouldn't call it a parody because it's not necessarily comical, but you know,
it'd be like Batman adjacent. You know?
Yeah. You could totally do that. Yeah, just call it something. I mean, I'm trying to think of names that you know. That because even in Watchmen there was a sort of a Batman type character. It was I think it was
the Owl,
the Owl, which was I think he was based on when they got those characters. Blue Beetle was one of the characters that they acquired, but he couldn't use them, so he made Owlman instead of Blue Beetle. So that's
hilarious. That's funny.
Yeah, all the characters. I think Rorschach was the Question, and they're all based on other characters that DC acquired, and I forgot why they wouldn't let him use them, but
because it's too gnarly, you know.
Yeah, that's probably why.
Wasn't it the same thing? Wasn't it the same thing with The Boys? Like,
it wouldn't surprise me, but I mean, so you could totally do that story. Yeah,
right on.
You got a lot of good concepts. Yeah, I mean, I would definitely, you know, if you have time to do them. I mean, I could. I'm definitely interested in, you know, want to back the Kickstarter, and I'm anxious to see what else you come up with, because so far all the ideas you pitched are really got some cool concepts behind them. So I'm interested to see how they're executed.
I just want to like, I just like the idea of exploring other cultures, right? You know, because I'm not black, but I did grow up in the 90s, and I grew up around hip hop. So like, you know, she's on the subway. She's coming home from working at or she's coming home from beauty school. She wants to become a hairstylist, but it's kind of a dead end street. We all know it. And she's got her little funny ass Walkman headphones on from the 90s, and she's blasting Biggie Smalls, or she's listening to Tupac or whatever. You know what I'm saying? Like just throwing in little nuggets from the 90s hip hop culture that I remember. But that's not, you know, that's not my defining characteristic as a human. I wouldn't say, but doing that kind of stuff and throwing those things in there, I think is kind of it's fun and exploratory for me, you know, as a writer. So, and then especially be able to illustrate it too. Like if you write it and you kind of in your mind think of what it's going to look like. That's why I'd be really afraid to give my words to somebody else and have them illustrate them. I'd be like, but that's not really what I was thinking it was going to look like, you know?
Yeah.
So, but me being such a nice guy, I'd be like, that looks great. And it looks terrible, you know. Every character looks like the Blob, and I'm like, not everybody's overweight, man. Like just that one guy, you know. And it's on purpose because he's got cholesterol issues, you know.
Yeah, I don't know. There's so many great artists out there who are looking for comics work that I'm sure you can find a decent artist and everything if you did want to. Because like I said, it sounds like you got a bunch of ideas, and you know, hopefully you'll have time to illustrate them all. But if you don't, you know, maybe look into, you know, partner with somebody else to do it. But But I don't know, you guys. Is there? You know, we're getting close to wrapping it up. Is there anything else that anyone wanted to say, or anything you wanted to ask David, or you know, put a kind of bow on the conversation?
Out of curiosity, so you've done zines and stuff like that, but this is officially like your first comic?
This is officially my first comic to ever actually be published and printed on real glossy paper. And
nice.
With all the advertisements at the end and all the cool stuff that makes it official. You know, it's got a UPC code on the back, all the stuff.
But that's badass. I mean, that's cool that that's happening, and it's cool that it stems from like DIY and like, you know, having done the work and now kind of being able to like have it as a book. I mean, that's really cool. It's exciting.
I mean, I'm interested to know, how did you get involved in comics? Like, what door did you knock on in order to be able to get what you're doing now?
Man, my first thing was I applied for this thing that used to exist called the Zarek grant. It's like the first comic I did, and then I ended up getting the grant. And so this is like way before Kickstarter. So it was like a grant from Peter Liard, the co-creator of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, gave me money to print. So that was kind of my end.
That was back in 1908, something like that.
Yeah, back in like 1850. Yeah,
way back.
Exactly.
Yeah.
In the ancient times.
Pre-Spanish flu.
But almost. I mean, it's like definitely pre-Kickstarter and all of the fundraisers and stuff. Kickstarter is a really good way. It's pretty much the best way to do indie stuff nowadays, I'd say. So I had
kind of an aversion to it because I'm really bad about asking people for money. Like I'm just terrible at it. I feel like I'm not earning it or something. But then I realized that it's a double-edged sword in that not only are you raising money for your thing, but you're also raising awareness, which is more important to me because with all the promotion you do and stuff, you're getting the name of the book out there and you're talking to people about it and they're paying attention. Whether or not they go and they purchase the book, they have heard about your silly vampire and her silly little saga. You know what I mean? So
it's a cool sounding saga. I'm excited about the Kickstarter. I'm gonna have to look into backing it too. Yeah.
Speaking of the Kickstarter, what are some of the perks? Like if you back at different levels, are there different? Because you had mentioned some various variant covers and.
Yeah, I've got I think 4 variant covers that you can get, and those tiers are $20, and you get the variant version, whichever one you want, and it comes with the original cover version as well. So you get 2 comics in the mail for $20, and then you also get the PDF download for $5. You can just get the PDF download and peruse it on your digital device of your choice. And then I've also got a tier that I think that's about $40 or $40 or $45. And it's all of the variant covers done by me. And it's, so there's that. And then you go down to the bottom, there's also the whole LKC catalog too. So you can add on books from the LKC catalog that you maybe missed out on, or if you have never heard of them and you want to check it all out, just dive right in. We are not part of a LKC universe, so the vampire has nothing to do with these other things that are happening, because Mark has a vampire comic that's unrelated. He also has like a Us or Them is his comic that's coming out. He's going to launch that Kickstarter right after Yuriko's done. And that looks badass, but it's like samurais and witches and Western kind of thing happening in like 1850 or 1890. It's kind of around the same thing. And I don't know how I'll feel about it, but I think in the next book I'm going to make a nod to it, like say something about something that happened in his comic and just see if it gets by him, or if he notices. It's like, hey, dude, what are you like? We're in the same universe now, man. I hate to break it to you. You know what I mean? But,
yeah, he probably did that. Yeah. So. And there was a comment here. Ground to Comics says Travis. I assume he's talking about Travis Charest is working on a comic with Mark Miller right now. So I guess he's still doing stuff, because I mean,
really,
Mark Miller is he's the creator like Kick-Ass and everything, which just kind of remind me of the comic, the idea you were talking about, sort of the girl and the sort of the Batman Gotham City. I mean, it definitely sounds like kind of like Kick-Ass, where it's kind of got that real, they don't always win, they get their ass handed to them type.
Yeah.
I
think she starts out with a little bit less naivete in it, and it's definitely a much more serious kind of emotional roller coaster for her in the book, the main character, as opposed to the main character of Kick-Ass. He's essentially a dumbass. I mean, he's an idiot.
Oh yeah. That
dude's a total dweeb.
Yeah.
And he gets his ass handed to him, and it's extremely entertaining to watch him get his ass handed to him. I mean, especially in the film, watching that actor, because he's so good looking. You're like, this guy looks too good. Please kick his ass. Oh, you did. Nice. Thanks. Split his lip. So I think that in this book that I'm talking about that has no title yet, that does not exist at all, with half a script written. I'm hoping that the reader will have a lot more empathy for the main character.
Yeah, it sounds like it. Yeah.
But
the way you
that's
say
awesome though. So it's pronounced Travis Charest.
I think it's Charest. I think. Yeah.
Well, those French people with their crazy ass names, man. I tell you what.
Yeah. I thought it was Charest too until I heard people say it and they're like, okay, it's Charest, I guess. So, yeah.
Is he French? Is he French Canadian?
I don't know. I've never. I don't know what the guy looks like. I only know his art, and his art's good enough. So that's all.
I'm assuming he has really well coiffed hair because all of his characters have that.
Well, yeah, because his stuff is very kind of stylized. It looks like he could be a fashion illustrator,
Yeah,
if he wanted to.
absolutely.
So, yeah, maybe. I don't know. I've never seen
airbrush and whatnot.
Yeah.
It was because of him that I tried to go and find the thinnest rapidograph pen I could possibly get to make those super fine lines. And then someone told me, he was like, dude, he's drawing huge, and they shrink it. And I'm like, what? Man.
Yeah, everyone's got that kind of aha moment because for me it was the first time I went. There was actually, I live in Arizona, and they opened in Scottsdale. They opened this comic book art gallery that was there for maybe, I don't know, it might have lasted like 5 years or so. But I went down there just to look at the original artwork, and I hadn't really seen anything before then. Then that was when I realized, they're drawing like 3 times the size, and then that's when I went. I was teaching myself how to ink, so I would go and I'd take like a Wildcats comic, or it was probably like X-Men, Jim Lee X-Men. I'd take it on the Xerox and I'd blow up to 11 by 17, so it was the right size, and I put vellum over it, and then I would just go over it, and I practice my inking over it and stuff like that. But
that's smart.
Yeah, and that's kind of how I taught myself, how to ink and everything. But yeah, up until that point, I was using rapidographs and stuff like that, and it's like, and I hate rapidographs.
Oh my god, yeah.
Like my
holding them straight up and down.
Yeah, my cards were okay because you can turn them a little bit, but with rapidographs, and then you have to clean them and all that. Oh,
yeah.
The cleaning is what I hate the most about rapidographs. Like, if there's just I don't know, just the whole process of that totally crusted up ink, stuck inside of this. And
did you ever have the machine that vibrated them, that would vibrate the ink until it would break it up and get it out of there? It was
I didn't even know that was a thing.
Oh yeah, I bought one because
really?
I was like, I gotta get this crusty shit out of my pen,
Huh? Yeah, I didn't know that was a thing.
Yeah, it was weird. It was crazy. Yeah.
All right, guys. Okay, so let's definitely. You want to check out Yuriko, the Kickstarter? There's a link, and but we'll kind of go back and we'll kind of do what we did in the beginning and pitch whatever stuff we do. So we'll start off with Josh this time. Josh, what do you got going on? What do you want to tell people before we close this thing out?
Yeah, so my comics, 2 stories, as well as Jacob's Apartment. 2 stories is the autobiographical kind of slice of life in the form of comics like Raw and just indie underground stuff. And then we got Jacob's Apartment, which is a graphic novel that's a doomed romance, coming of age slice of life story. And then last but not least, No Saboteurs music. Go check it out, and that'll do it for me.
All right, Corey, what about you?
Yeah, you can find my stuff at CoreyKerr.com. There's weird animations and illustrations and whatnot. And if you want to get on the mailing list for when I release these shirts.
So what's the new one? What's the concept behind the new one that you're working on now?
So it's kind of a mixture of Eastern gods. So it'll be like one of the many armed things, and they'll be kind of in a lotus pose, and I'm mixing it with a bunch of religious iconography, and then it'll be he'll be holding a bunch of different things that we use to distract ourselves, and so it'll be about the numbing behavior that people do to avoid being.
Oh, you cut out, Corey.
Oh no. We lost Corey.
You're getting
Every
deep.
man, I have the worst internet right now. I don't know what's going on, but it's going to be about the numbing behavior that we do to avoid being authentic and creative and in touch with other people. And so he'll have, all of the different electronic distractions, all our little magic glass rectangles that we use to not think and feel things. So
You might have to slow down on these a little bit, or you're going to take all my money. I'm putting these on t-shirts.
Full shirt.
All right, David, you're up. Tell people about Yuriko and anything else you got going on.
I've got a comic book that's live on Kickstarter right now called Yuriko, and it's about a 500-year-old Korean vampire living in 1900 Seoul at the dawn of the Industrial Revolution in that area. And yeah, she's been in hiding. She's been using her daughter as a familiar, and she gets pretty buck wild when somebody tries to mess with her kid. So don't mess with a vampire's daughter, or she'll destroy you. Yeah. I'm at Narita Comic. It's down there in the little thingy right here.
Yeah.
For all of my social media stuff, so you can check out my mermaid comic, or you can link to whatever other weird stuff I got going on. But yeah, that's me in a nutshell.
Yeah, and like I said, there's a link to Yuriko in the description of the Kickstarter, so definitely click on that, check it out, and just go and check out some of the artwork because it looks great. So I'm definitely going to be backing it. And then as far as me, you can find me here on this. This is my channel, Circworks. Like I said, I've got my Making Comics 101 series. If you want to learn how to make comics, it is a step-by-step course on how to make comics. Pretty comprehensive. There's tons of videos in the series, and you can just kind of watch through the whole thing, or you can pick and choose which things you want to learn. If you want to learn inking, if you want to learn coloring or whatever, there's episodes on each one of those different disciplines. And then you can find my stuff at circworks.com. I've got digital tools to help you make comics, templates, fonts, all that kind of stuff. And then last but not least, the show we do is the Artcasters. We do the show every single week. It rotates between channels. It'll go to my channel, then it'll go to Josh's channel, and Corey's channel. Not necessarily in that order, but if you want to know whose channel it's going to be on, who the guest is going to be, all that stuff, we have a mailing list, and you can just join the mailing list and you'll be alerted. Usually we send out a newsletter usually about 30 minutes before we go live, and it'll tell you who the guest is and whose channel it's going to be on, all that stuff, and it'll give you the link. So definitely sign up for that mailing list if you haven't, because it gets a little confusing with the way we run the show, but the best way to find out is just join that mailing list. So yeah, that's all we have today. Thanks, David, and thanks to everyone in the chat, and we will see everyone next week. I think Corey's channel, I don't know, but join the mailing list and you'll find out. All right, later everyone.
All right, thanks.